Sound test. Welcome to the Co-operative Press AGM, our first online AGM. I hope I find you all well in these very strange times. Usually we would start by introducing everyone on the platform, but today we are all presenting from home. I'm Barbara Rainford, Chair of Co-operative Press. With me on the virtual platform are our Secretary, Richard Bickle, and our Executive Editor, Rebecca Harvey. No one could have predicted the situation we find ourselves in today. Our thoughts are with all those who have been affected by the COVID-19 crisis, in particular our colleagues across the co-op movement, including those in healthcare and retail, and also the cooperatives that are struggling with the economic and social implications of the current global crises. The role of Co-op News is to connect, champion and challenge the global cooperative movement. We have been telling the stories of cooperatives and cooperators around the world for nearly 150 years. Those stories and the way of telling them have changed, but your press and your board are still utterly committed to upholding the values and principles of cooperation and working for you, our members. Before we move on with the agenda, I'd like to say a couple of thank yous. To Cooperatives UK, especially Paul Murphy, Emma Laycock and Linda Barlow, who have helped us set up and run our first virtual AGM. Also to Ed Mayo for his decade of hard work as Secretary of Cooperatives UK. As you may know, Ed left this summer to join the charity Pilot Light. He achieved an awful lot and the movement will really miss him. And also a very special thank you to Gavin Ewing, who was a press director for many years, but who has had to step down due to Co-op Group appointing rules. Last year, we welcomed Gillian Lonergan to the board, who was co-opted in line with our rules. Gillian retired from the Cooperative Heritage Trust last year, and her knowledge of the movement's history and heritage is unparalleled. She, together with fellow director Tim Hartley, our Secretary Richard and Rebecca have formed a working group in the lead up to our anniversary year, which is in 2021, to explore how we should mark the milestone. So, to start, I'm going to hand over to Richard for a bit of housekeeping.
Good afternoon, everybody. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate, and I'd just like to let you know that we are recording this afternoon's proceedings to assist with preparing the minutes. As you've probably gathered, Barbara, Rebecca and I are in different locations, and although we're confident in the technology may not be so confident in us. If one of the panelists drops out, they can rejoin. If the hosting of the meeting ceases, we will temporarily adjourn the meeting and resend a link to all participants. And we'd ask you in those circumstances to check your inbox and click the link to rejoin. Members are taking part via Zoom webinar, which will allow you to participate in votes and to submit questions. In terms of voting, we haven't had a request for any card votes today, so we will be using a simple poll that will be open for around 45 seconds on the proposals that require voting. We're going to do a little practice poll now, which should be on your screens. Does pineapple belong on pizza? You've got 45 seconds to submit your vote. Thank you very much. So the result is very close, but it's carried by 40, hang on a minute. Yes, it is. It's carried by 44% in favour. Thank you. When we propose motions, we will be asking for a seconder. If you would like to second a proposal, please write second in the chat function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll then know who's got there first and who to record as a seconder for the minutes. As well as being on Zoom, we're live streaming this meeting on YouTube. If you're in the Zoom webinar, you can use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen to ask questions. You'll also be able to see all the questions that have been submitted. We will try to answer all the questions that we can, but you can also upvote questions that you would like to focus on by clicking the thumbs up button next to somebody else's question. You can ask questions at any point during the meeting. If you agree with a question, you can upvote them, as I just outlined, and that will make them more likely to be answered. We will try to get through as many as we can, but if we don't get to yours live, we will respond to it by email in due course. It's also worth pointing out that there is a delay in streaming to YouTube of around 20 seconds, and also a slight delay for those of you participating through an iPad. Now, if you're in the YouTube, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can still submit questions in the live chat, and Bev Perkins will copy and paste those with your name into the Q&A on the webinar so that everybody has a chance to see what questions are being raised. As you know, this meeting will immediately be followed by a special general meeting to address a minor rule change. Please remain in the meeting and the SGM will follow straight on after the close of the AGM. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Moving on to agenda item 2, do we have any apologies for absence?
I've not been sent any apologies. If anyone who's on the call in the meeting has apologies that they would like recorded in the minutes, if you could pop that in the chat, we will transcribe that into the minutes of the meeting in due course.
Thank you, Richard. Agenda item 3 is approval of the minutes of the AGM held on the 21st of June 2019. I will be proposing this. Can I ask for a seconder, please?
Thank you. That's seconded by David Patterson.
Thank you. The resolution should soon be on our screen for us to cast our votes now. You will have 45 seconds to place your vote to approve the minutes of the 2019 AGM.
Thank you. I can confirm that that's carried.
Thank you, Richard. Agenda item 4 is matters arising from the minutes. We will now take any questions on this. As Richard explained earlier, please submit questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or the chat box on YouTube. We'll give it a minute. Beverly, do we have any questions?
To date, we only have one contentious issue, Barbara, and that is Shaz and James have both queried whether the vote was actually 44% against pineapple on pizza, not in favour, as we vote. And otherwise, we have a query about how many people are attending.
Right. Rebecca, can you answer that?
Yes, I can. We have 35 people attending now in total, and there are more watching on YouTube as well. I haven't got that figure in front of me because it messes up with my sound here, but we have got 35 people in attendance on the webinar.
Right, so no matters arising from the minutes then. So thank you, everyone. I think we're on to agenda item 5, which is the presentation of the annual report and accounts. For this, let me first introduce our executive editor, Rebecca Harvey.
Thank you, Barbara. Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone in the Zoom webinar and everybody on YouTube as well. So as Barbara mentioned at the start, I don't think anyone would have dreamed it would be where we are today, with all societies presenting their AGMs remotely, either from home or socially distanced at a central location. I mean, everyone's done brilliantly so far, and it's great to see members being so supportive and engaged as well. I echo Barbara's thanks to Co-operatives UK, to Ed Mayo and to Gavin Ewing as well. And would also like to add my own thanks to both the Co-op Press board and my Co-op News colleagues. The board have been hugely supportive, both over the last financial year that we're reporting on today and also during the pandemic, which really hit the UK just as our financial year ended. Barbara, Richard and I have had regular meetings throughout lockdown to ensure that the news is on track, and our cooperative has been able to continue to connect, champion and challenge the global movement as it faces into this most extraordinary of times. My colleagues at Co-op News have also done a remarkable job, stepping up immediately to the challenge of setting up and maintaining what is basically a remote newsroom. It certainly opened our eyes to new ways of working, with new flexibilities in place around things like childcare, caring roles, and our international communications as well. It's certainly been very interesting. So a big thank you to Miles Hadfield, Anke Vonya and Kian Mockastone-Bonnet. I know you are watching this, and please know that you're very much appreciated. So for the next slide, let's talk about membership. As mentioned in the annual report, and as many of you here today have experienced firsthand directly, Co-op Press has had multiple and very significant issues around membership, and in particular individual membership, largely due to an inherited system of legacy databases going back decades. And although they've been secure, they were never really dealt with and maintained properly. And this includes issues such as delayed renewal notices and lapsed individual memberships that were never chased. We are addressing this as a matter of urgency. And we've got some brilliant help from colleagues at both Cooperatives UK and Cooperative Web, which is it's a tech worker co-op. Together, we're working to amalgamate and verify multiple data sets to ensure that the proper and correct data is verified and complete in a rigorous and sustainable manner. And this process has been challenging and frustrating for colleagues and members alike. And we thank members for their patience with this situation, and can only apologise for getting into this position in the first place. What I would say, though, is that we are making good progress on this, and I am confident that these issues will be resolved soon. So let's look at something slightly more positive. The work of Co-op Press is truly global, and I'll talk a little bit more about our international work in a moment. But when we were looking at our website analytics in preparation for the annual report, one statistic really stood out. In the year to the 29th of February 2020, 54% of visitors to our website were outside of the UK. And in that year, visitors to our website, or we had visitors to our website from every single country in the world except for 4. Just 4 countries didn't. Now, that doesn't include territories or disputed regions, but it does show the truly global nature of cooperation. And what I would say is that global nature isn't just restricted to Co-op News. You know, the fair trade ingredients and products sold by the UK retail societies are global. Platform co-ops and the decision-making tools they use, such as Lumio, are global. Cooperatives are a global community, and in this time of global pandemic, when the call is to keep on cooperating and for cooperatives to build a fairer world, that is really important to remember. There's some other great stats in the report as well. Our readership demographic is relatively young, and we are read by a pretty much equal gender split. We do have a pretty good output of news stories and features too, with about 2.5 stories on average a day. And do bear in mind that, you know, Co-op Press only has 3 full-time members of staff and a half-time designer. So the focus of the year, if we could have a look at the next slide, the focus and the priority was very much on creating a news product that is wholly fit for purpose for the 21st century. 2021 will be the 150th anniversary of Co-op Press, but our role is very different now compared to the last century or the century before that. Over the last few years, we have focused on becoming more digital, more international, and more outward facing in what we report and how. What I would say is that Co-op Press has several very productive, very friendly, long-standing historic membership agreements with UK retail societies. You know, we were founded by the retail societies. And we are beyond grateful for the vital and ongoing cooperation with these cooperatives. And we see a long-term sustainable relationships with these and other organisations as an integral part of our future. But we're also aware that these societies don't necessarily at the moment represent the majority of Co-op news readers. I mean, as mentioned, if half of our online readers are from outside the UK, this is starting to be reflected in the diverse locations of our members themselves, our individual members. We have digital members in 16 countries, from Switzerland and Canada right through to France and the Philippines. So over the year, 2 pieces of work have really helped to inform what we do. Firstly, development towards a new 5-year strategy with the help of Cooperative Futures and Cooperative and Mutual Solutions. So thank you to those as well. And also our involvement in the New Force project with Cooperatives UK, the Co-op College, the Cooperative Heritage Trust and the Co-op Party. Both of these initiatives have been undertaken with the security and sustainability of Co-op Press in mind for its members, both present and future. And this renewed sense of collaboration in all its forms has already seen some brilliant outputs. The More Than a Shop podcast has been a joint project between Co-op Press, Co-op UK, the Co-op College and the Heritage Trust, and the Co-op Group have helped out as well. And on that, I'd just like to give a special mention to Layla O'Sullivan from Co-ops UK, who has done an incredible amount of work behind the scenes to make that the success it is. So thank you so much, Layla, for that. Another big piece of work we did during the year was a piece of research commissioned by the Co-op Group National Members Council on cooperative member education, training and information, which was produced in collaboration between us, the College and Co-ops UK again. And I'd like to give a special mention on that to Michelle Parkin-Kelly from Co-ops UK and to Amanda Benson from the College for their excellent work on that. So thank you both. As mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about our international work too. It's important for the sustainable future of the press that we diversify our income. It's common sense for all of us. And over the last year, one of the things we've been doing is working to re-establish our relationship with the International Cooperative Alliance. Last year, we were a major media partner at the ICA's Global Conference, and our international editor, Anka Vonya, and myself travelled to Rwanda as part of the UK delegation. And there we worked with the ICA to report daily reports and online communications for the ICA, and these were also used in Co-op news output. Later in the year, in February was it, Anka also travelled to Malaysia. She was invited to deliver training sessions at the ICA's Global Youth Forum. And Miles was invited to New York last year as well to be a panellist at the Platform Cooperative Conference there. As a result of these events and through deepening relationships with the international movement, Co-op News has won a couple of significant contracts recently on the back of that. This includes producing the ICA's quarterly member communication. And also in the new year, we led a consortium of cooperatives and co-operators that successfully bid for the communications contract for the 2020 World Cooperative Congress that was scheduled to be held in South Korea in December this year. Obviously, that event has had to be postponed due to the pandemic, but work on that has already begun and we're thrilled to be a part of it. Please don't think we only cover international events though. Between us three, Miles, Anka and I attended and reported on 16 conferences and events in the UK throughout that time. These included everything. I'm not going to read them all out, but it included the Ways Forward Conference, Congress, the Social Business Wales Conference, the CCIN Conference, the Co-op Party Conference, the College Centenary Conference, Future Co-op Conference, the Retail Conference, Practitioners Forum. And we did also privileged to help Scott Mid break the Guinness World Record for the largest ever Burns Night Supper. That was an excellent evening. So thank you to Scott Mid for that. It's brilliant to see the diversity of UK cooperatives, and it's a privilege to meet all the people involved. But speaking of diversity and equality, Co-op News stands firm in the belief that Black Lives Matter. We pledge to play our part in helping to end systemic racism, and we encourage the cooperative community to call racism out, read, learn and support this very important cause. We also acknowledge, though, our own lack of diversity and representation. Our content is diverse, but our contributors are less so. And we are actively and very deliberately working to change this. We do pledge to do better and foster a cooperative space where everyone is seen and heard, and you'll be able to see this for yourselves through our content. And if you don't, please do call us out on it. So a quick final thanks once again to our members, and I look forward to telling more of your stories over the next year and beyond. So thank you very much. I'm now going to pass over to Richard for the presentation of the accounts.
Good afternoon again. We're going to be asking you to receive the accounts which have been circulated. In a departure from usual practice, we do need to apologise that these are not yet fully audited and therefore are not ready to file with the FCA yet. The reason for this is that in the context of the pandemic, we have had some unexpected delays in confirming one or two of the figures. We don't expect the result to change significantly, if at all. And our auditor, Patrick Morello from Third Sector Accountants, is on this webinar this afternoon and can take any questions and explain the current position in detail. So what we're asking you to do in due course is to receive the accounts in front of you and authorise the board to sign them and file them in due course. So with that little bit of context, I would say we can take any questions on detailed matters, but the overall picture is a very small reduction in turnover, a significant reduction in costs, leading to a very close to break-even result. I have to say we were very disappointed that we were just in the red rather than just in the black this year, but we have every confidence that we will return to profit in the coming 12-month period. I would draw your attention to the fact that we've seen in current assets and current liabilities a reduction both in debtors, money owed to us within the next 12 months, and creditors, money that we owe to other people in the next 12 months, which I think illustrates that we're getting much better at day-to-day housekeeping, collecting money that's owed to us and paying people who we owe. So we think that overall this is an encouraging position. I would remind members that particularly in terms of print, we are trading in a rapidly declining market. We've seen in advertising. This is something that we're working hard on, and we've got plans to diversify income both within the UK but significantly on an international stage, building on our position as a unique cooperative news service around the world. I won't take you through every number line by line. I'm sure between Patrick and myself, if anyone's got any specific queries, we'd be very happy to deal with them. But I'd now like to introduce Patrick. This is his first year as auditor. We're very pleased to be working with Third Sector Accountants. They are a worker cooperative. They're based in Holyoke House, appropriate. fairly easily between the organisations. So I'd like to pass over to Patrick.
Hello, yes, I'm very pleased to be acting as the auditor of Co-op Press this year. I don't have anything specific to add about the accounts. I think Richard summarised the situation fairly well, and in essence, the draft accounts are very similar to the previous year, and in fact show an improvement on the previous year. During the year, there was a 15,000 expenditure on consultants to develop a business plan, which will bear fruit in the future. So if that hadn't happened, then there would have in fact been a surplus in the accounts so far. As I say, there have been issues mainly dealing with aspects of the accounts that relate to previous years, not the one we're looking at. So we've had a lot of trouble trying to establish some of the opening balances on debtors, and because of COVID-19, that's just taken a lot longer than we anticipated, which is the reason we haven't been able to sign off the audit just yet. I'm happy to take any questions anyone has about the account.
Thank you, Patrick. We will now take questions on the annual report and accounts. As before, please submit questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or the chat box on YouTube, and we'll give it a minute.
One from you, 3.
A minute seems an awful long time on here. Do we have any questions, Beverly?
I think Beverly may have been breaking up. So we do have a question here from Jim Watts, a couple of the accounts on the Q&A. Firstly, there is a 27% year-on-year reduction in wages and salaries. Do the costs in 2019-2020 represent the underlying run rate for the society moving forward? And secondly, the balance sheet includes trade debtors of 108,000. What procedures does the society have in place to recover amounts due in a timely and efficient basis in order to optimise cash flow? And that's from Jim Watts in Central England. Richard, do you want to take that first of all?
Yes, I'll take the first one. So the reduction in salaries, that is the new run rate based on the team that we put in place when Rebecca was appointed.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, excellent. That happened during the previous 12-month period, but it didn't. We didn't see the full effects of the saving until the year that we're reporting on. What I would say about the future is that we're aware that we've been running very lean to the point that maybe we've been understaffed during the last 12 months. So there is a possibility that we will have a modest increase in staff expenditure in the coming period. On the debtors, Rebecca does the credit control, so can probably deal with that in detail. A number of those debtors are significantly aged debtors. This is one of the things that we've been working through with the auditor. It predates Rebecca's time. I can confirm that on the very current, as in within the current year's position, we've been fairly efficient at collecting the money, and we are working through one by one those aged creditor positions. One significant one is an organisation who refused to deal with us except through the post. They won't email, they won't telephone. And obviously with the coronavirus delaying the postal service and meaning people aren't at their desks, that has significantly delayed that one particular issue being resolved.
Thank you, Richard. If you want to take the second half of that question, what procedures does the society have in place to recover amounts? We are working with third sector on that. We do have a fairly robust procedure in place now. We are aware that there have been several issues in the past, particularly for societies, and some of that does stem from a misposting or a previous misposting from a previous accountancy firm that we did work for. But moving on for the future, I do think we do have a robust procedure in place. So thank you, Jim. Kath Muller also asks, what other income is there apart from subscriptions? If you want me to answer that as well, Richard, basically we have about four main income streams. The largest is membership subscription from retail societies. We have individual members who pay individual subscriptions. We have a very limited amount of advertising revenue, both print and digital. And then we also have the communications work that we do, which is things like the ICA contracts that I mentioned previously. This hasn't necessarily usually formed a big part of our income, but it is something we are potentially looking to expand in light with the outcome of the strategy that we worked on last year.
Right, I don't know if we've got Beverly back, and I can't see the question and answers properly, but I think that might be all the questions.
There was
I
one.
think we've got in the Zoom chat. Hang on. So David Smith has asked in the Zoom chat, Rebecca marked that the news operates with very few people. How do we envisage managing the potential loss of a staff member due to COVID-19, etc.? But for any period of time. So what is a contingency for loss of key people?
Rebecca?
Hello, thank you for the question, David. That is a very, very good question. Obviously, very important right now. Although we have the full-time staff and Kira's designer in-house, we each do a bit of each other's roles. So Miles and I do work on the design occasionally. Miles and Anchor take guest editorship every so often as well. So if one of us were lost, others could step up to fill in that gap. What I would also say though is that we do work with a fair good number of freelance journalists. In particular, we've worked with a new guy in New York at the moment, a guy called Chad Small, who's been excellent. We also have our regular contributors as well in Paul Gosling and Susan Press, who are also excellent journalists. In terms of a contingency plan, this also came out in our strategy and is something that is vital now more than ever. So we do have a very robust contingency plan in place to mitigate that. So thank you, David.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think we might have Bev back now. Is there another question?
We've got one from Luke Lakey. How were rental costs reduced at Holyoke House?
Who's the best to answer that? Rebecca, probably.
So thank you for the question, Luke. Rental costs were reduced by reducing the space that we take in Holyoke House. Previously, we've moved offices a couple of times since I joined the organisation. Most recently, we were up on the second floor. We had a fairly large office space. As the Co-op News team reduced, we didn't need the space that we were doing. So in a cost-saving exercise, we moved down to the first floor. We'd moved for a couple of reasons. The cost saving was one of them. We basically have halved the rent from about November last year. So that will be a significant saving going forward as well. The other reason we moved was where we were on the second floor, we were quite out the way. I don't know how many people know Holyoke House, but you got the stairs around the corner, right to the end, but we were tucked in the corner. Where we are now on the first floor is right next to the lift, just a few doors down from the lift, in between a couple of Co-operatives UK offices. So we do feel now that we are far more involved in the I wouldn't say energy of cooperative house, but you have people walking past the door who pop in and say hi, and it does have an impact both on staff morale and on the actual content that you can produce, because you're more engaged in that life of Holyoke House.
Thank you, Rebecca. I think we've got time for one more question. Is there?
Yeah, so I take the one from Ian Hewitt. So Ian says that I have found that the digital-only service to be problematic, a difficulty accessing up-to-date editions, and sometimes a difficulty of logging onto the membership account. Is this a general problem? And if so, is it being addressed, as it is pretty frustrating? Thanks to Rebecca for fixing so far. Ian, yes, you are right. Frustrating is one word for it. I can think of several more. What I would say is that this accessibility is an ongoing issue, and it's part of the issue that I mentioned previously about membership. So the way that the digital access works is through, at the moment we use WooCommerce, which has a member portal on our WordPress website. And this is something we are working on very diligently with Cooperative Web. So although it is very frustrating, this is part of the ongoing work plan we have to update the website and to make sure that membership is fit for purpose for your Co-op Press.
Thank you, Rebecca. If there's any other questions, we should be able to answer them offline, but I think we need to move on now. So thank you, everyone. As Richard explained, we are proposing that these draft accounts be received formally at this AGM. I will be proposing this. Can I ask for a seconder?
Just waiting. If someone could put into the Zoom chat that they second it. Oh yes, Elaine is seconding it. Elaine Dean.
Thank you. The resolution will now be on the screen for you to cast your votes. You have 45 seconds to place your vote to receive the draft accounts. You can vote now.
Thank you. I declare that carried.
Thank you, Richard. So we move on to item 7, which is the reappointment of third sector accountancy as our auditor for the financial year to February 2021. Third sector is a worker cooperative based in Holyoke House in Manchester, where Co-operative Press is based, as are Cooperatives UK, the Co-op College and the Cooperative Heritage Trust. As the name suggests, it works with third sector organisations, including charities, social enterprises and cooperatives. I will be proposing this. Can I ask for a seconder, please?
Yes, we've got Luke Blakey has seconded that. Thank you.
Thank you. The resolution will now be on the screen for you to cast your votes. You have 45 seconds to place your vote to reappoint third sector accountancy. Please vote now.
Thank you very much. I declare that carried.
Thank you. Now, item 8 on the agenda is reserved for questions. As before, you can submit your questions using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or through the chat box on YouTube. We'll give it a minute for people to type in questions. Do we have Bev back with us? Do we have any questions?
We have no additional questions from this point, but just checking whether you picked up on some additional questions from Luke Blakey that came in on the live chat regarding our profits, balance sheet, etc. Did you receive those? If I just put them to you to check. Have the debt provision achieved? With work on the underlying tech, this be new normal.
Did you get that, Rebecca? I didn't hear all of that.
Yeah, I'm just seeing it in the chat now. Thank you, Bev. So we've got Luke Blakey via the YouTube chat saying got bad debt. Is this a new normal? And disappointingly, no profit this year. Will this be addressed in the next 5 years? And will the balance sheet return to the previous strength? Richard, do you want to take this?
I can do. I can confirm, Luke, that we are budgeting for a surplus in the current year, and we're working on. We had been some way down the road on working towards a new 3 to 5 year plan. Obviously, the coronavirus pandemic has both somewhat delayed that and encouraged us to revisit the kind of wider framing. But we are reasonably confident that there are opportunities for us to grow new business with new cooperative customers and to increase our individual membership such that and we will reduce our dependence on a small number of long-standing UK co-ops who we want to continue working with. But in terms of risk management, we want to also spread our business a little more widely. So there was a thing about the bad debt being the new normal. I would hope that by the time next year's accounts are prepared, we should be in a much better position. As Rebecca explained, we've got much better systems for monitoring debts that are owed to us, making sure they're collected and they're properly recorded in the management accounts. And we have had quite good success in untangling some of the problems of the past, which I should say predate Rebecca's appointment, and she's been an absolute yes on fail, some of it requiring a bit, some of my predecessor, our secretary, and third sector accountants.
Thanks, Richard. There's a few questions coming through. So Kath Miller asks, it seems from the graphic that there's a particular increase in interest from the US and India. Is that true? And do you have any thoughts on why? I would say yes. there is particular interest for a couple of reasons. We've got a very good relationship with the platform co-op movement, which is spearheaded by the New School in New York and Trevor Schultz. As mentioned, Miles was invited to go and be a panelist there, and he was looking at he spoke particularly on the future of cooperative media. We have a US-based Facebook page, which we have tried to be more active on over the last year, and also we are doing a lot of work with NCBA Clusa as well in terms of co-reporting events, interviewing each other for various publications, and generally trying to build a relationship that way. So yeah, yes, definitely on the US. In India, India is a very interesting one. It's got a very strong cooperative movement, mainly led by IFFCO, IFFCO. I can't remember what the acronym exactly stands for, but it's the Indian Fertilizer something cooperative organisation. They are huge and they do a lot of very, very good work throughout the country. Dr. U.S. Awasi, who is the CEO there, is a very interesting person. We met him in Rwanda. He was there at the ICA event last year. So in terms of that, they are very good at sharing our stories, particularly on Twitter. So we have got a lot of web traffic through them. So that's the reasons behind India and the USA. So that one's done. Stephen Gill said, do any retail societies sell co-op news on their shelves? And if not, is this an opportunity to increase the reach and turnover? Do you want me to answer this one as well, Richard and Barbara?
Yes, please.
This is a very interesting question, and it's one that has definitely been asked before. The problem with, I'm not going to call it a problem, an interesting conundrum for Co-op News is that we cover co-ops around the world and we cover every sector. Generally, the people shopping in co-op food stores do not necessarily want to read about agricultural co-ops in Australia or football co-ops in Pakistan or tulip co-ops in Denmark. It's not necessarily a similar kind of demographic. It's something we are working to change. But what I would say is that we did a very interesting piece of work a couple of years ago with a co-op group where we worked with some of their procurement team to see if it would be possible to get co-op news on some of their shelves. It was deemed not possible at the time, partly because if you look at magazine stands, they're packed already. There's very, very little shelf space to place co-op news on. What we are doing though is we're trialing different digital subscriptions. So we're doing some very good work with Scott Mid, who took up a digital subscription for a lot of their directors and executives, and that's been very successful there. We are looking to replicate that in other societies, and from there look how we can get co-op news content out to lay members, not just staff and directors and other interested co-op activists associated with the organisation. So I would say watch this space, and yeah, it's something we will carry on doing. This does kind of lead on to another question added by, what did I just say? Hang on 1 second. By Steve Thompson, who said, would it be possible for independent radical bookshops? And there's a missing bit there, but I presume would it be possible independent radical bookshops to sell co-op news? Yes, absolutely. We are in conversation with October Books and also News from Nowhere in Liverpool. So again, it's a question of watch this space, and hopefully we will see them on the shelves fairly soon. Well, hopefully within the next year at least. It's done. It's done.
We've probably got time for one more question.
So David Smith says, read the New Force Project. How do you see the future and how might members be more supportive? Richard or Beverly, would one of you like to answer this?
I'd be happy to do so. So David, lovely to hear from you. Not seen you for some time. I was representing the press on the New Force Project, and I think one of the very positive things that's come from it is that there's been an increase in the number of collaborative projects across the various central co-op agencies, such as the More Than a Shop podcast, some research on education and training, etc. And I think that what we'll see is that naturally there are new relationships that have been built between individuals and new potential for working together to add value jointly and serve our membership. So I think that there's a lot of positive, both in terms of relationships and projects, that's come out of the project so far. In terms of how members could be more supportive, I guess, of course, we're always interested to speak with people about their needs and where they could benefit from the expertise that Co-op Press and others have to offer.
Thank you, Bev, and thank you,
Barbara,
everyone.
we're still running like a little bit ahead of time, so we can answer a couple more questions if that's okay, Barbara.
You can if you want to, yes.
There are a couple actually that came through on live chat from John Courtnish.
Okay, I can see one here. So John Courtnish asks, read the use of Co-op Commonweal and Co-op Commonwealth over the years. Barbara, Richard, would you like to answer that?
I think so. I think, John, good to hear from you. Thank you for that contribution. Those who know John Courtnish will know that he is very keen to maintain, rehabilitate and promote the use of the language of the cooperative commonwealth as a vision for a different kind of society, and the commonweal, I think, as a term relating to the things that we hold in common cooperatively. I think we could certainly, you'll see that that language is used in stories from time to time. I think you're raising a kind of bigger philosophical question, which is certainly valid, and is something that I think we could think about, particularly in terms of the conversations that are going on at the moment in terms of what a kind of new cooperative world post-pandemic might look like. So I think that's watch this space, but thank you for raising it.
Great, and there's a question from Chris Pilkington asking, do we have many cooperative academy and other cooperative schools which subscribe to Co-op Press? The short answer is no, we don't. The long answer is this is something I will look into. Thank you for raising it, Chris. I think we did have subscriptions previously through some of the co-op schools when Julie Thorpe was at the Co-op College. So I'm not sure what happened with them, slightly before my time, but thank you for raising that. It's a very good point, and we'll certainly have a look at that for you. Thank you. Richard, let me know that the IFCO stands for the Indian Farmers Fertilizer Cooperative. So if you're interested in that, do go and look them up. And in response to your comments, Richard, John Courtney suggests Houseman's and Friends House London as outlets.
Yes, we've certainly got relationships with Houseman's, but thank you.
Okay, I think that's all questions I can see, unless you can see any more, Bev.
No, that's it at present.
Right, good. Thank you, everyone. I think that moves us on to item 9, which is the results of our board elections. There were 4 seats up for election this year, 3 by and from the organisational members and 1 by and from the individual members. Richard, please could you confirm the results?
Yes, thank you very much. Are we getting a slide for this, Rebecca? Yes, we are. Excellent. I'm delighted to report that for the organisational section, Barbara Rainford and David Patterson have been re-elected to the board. Elaine Dean returns to the board. Commiserations to Scott Arledge from Heart of England. He was a new candidate. We hope he'll maintain interest in the press, because we do obviously need some renewal in our board membership over the coming years. So congratulations to those 3. And then for the individual section, congratulations to Shaz Rahman, another new candidate who won that seat. Congratulations to Ray, who I'm sure is well known to many people on this call. I suppose I would just say that as secretary, a lot of work goes into running elections. So it's actually really good that we have more candidates interested than there are vacancies, that people want to participate, and that we have a lively democracy, because that's certainly one of the things that cooperation is all about. So thank you very much to everyone who stood, and thank you to everyone who voted. And thank you to Rebecca, who created an online voting system for us at fairly short notice when we realised that we were unlikely to have access to Holyoke House and the postal service would be disrupted due to the pandemic. So thank you very much, Rebecca.
Thank you, Richard, and congratulations to the successful candidates, and I look forward to working with you all. Thank you also to the unsuccessful candidates, and thank you for standing for election. And I'd also like to say a special thank you to Ray Henderson, who has been Press Secretary and Director for many years, providing unparalleled levels of knowledge and support for your society. I'm sure this isn't the end of the relationship between Ray and the Co-op Press, and we look forward to working with Ray again in the future. Which brings us on to the final item on the agenda, which is the confirmation of board fees. This currently stands at £500 per year plus expenses. I will be proposing this. Could we have a seconder, please?
Yeah, we've got Luke Blakey just beat Jim to it. So Luke has seconded that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The resolution will be on the screen for you to cast your votes. You have 45 seconds to place your vote to approve board fees. Please can you vote now?
I declare that carried. Thank you very much.
Could you read out those results for YouTube, please, Richard?
Yes, so 20 in favour, 1 against, with 2 abstentions.
Thank you, Richard. So that brings us to the close of the annual general meeting, but please don't leave us just yet, as the special general meeting to approve a minor rule change will follow shortly. Thank you to everyone who took part, either as a member or as an observer. Today, more than ever, the importance of cooperation is clear. We can build a better, fairer society through cooperating. This AGM was supposed to be taking place in Rochdale ahead of Co-operative UK's Festival of Cooperation. That has had to be postponed until next year, but the AGMs of both the Cooperative College and Cooperatives UK are taking place later today, so do please attend or observe those if you can. The Cooperative College is at 3 o'clock and Co-ops UK is at 5 o'clock. There's also a chance to find out more about co-ops and tell more people about co-ops during Cooperatives Fortnight, which begins on Monday. The theme this year is Keep Cooperating. The latest Co-op Economy report from Co-ops UK shows co-op new starts are almost twice as likely to survive the first 5 years as other startups. Co-ops are more resilient, share control, share wealth, are better for communities and more ethical, which are all brilliant reasons to keep on cooperating. And don't forget that 4th of July is also the International Day of Cooperatives, which is looking at the contribution of cooperatives to combating climate change. Now we move on to the special general meeting, which has been convened to propose a minor change to one of our rules. As with the AGM, you can ask questions at any time through the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We will endeavour to get as many as possible live and we'll follow up the ones we don't offline. First of all, Richard, please could you confirm that the meeting is still quorate?
It is still quorate, thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any apologies for the SGM?
None have been sent to me in advance, But as I said for the AGM, if anyone on the call has any apologies, please paste them in the chat and we will get them recorded in the minutes.
Thank you. I'm now going to hand over to Richard to present the proposal to change Rule 26.
Okay, thank you very much, Barbara. So the background to this is that back in 2004, the Co-operative Press switched from being a purely federal society, i.e. a co-op owned by other co-ops and organisations, to a hybrid structure which also admitted individual members. What we discovered at last year's AGM, which on the first attempt to hold it was in quorum, was that when those rule changes were done, the quorum rule wasn't changed to include individual members in the counting of what constituted a quorum. Now, it did provide room that the quorum generating. We felt it would be much of order membership, so it counted both organisations and individuals. So what we've done is we've put together this draft, which we think is a reasonable balance between making sure that meetings have enough members present, that they are representative truly of the wider membership, but also doesn't set the bar so high that it's very hard to conduct the business which has to be conducted. So I would commend it to members and happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have any questions about the rule change? Remember, you can use the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen or the chat box on YouTube. We'll keep the rule change on the screen and give it a minute.
While we are waiting for those questions, Kath Muller has brought it to our attention that the college AGM is at 4 p.m, not 3 p.m. Apologies for that. So the Co-op College AGM is at 4 p.m. today. Thank you, Kath.
So Kath has raised the question on was the quorum affected by the number of individual members? So no, so individual members simply weren't counted. Now, the fact that most of the people who are appointed by organisations happen to also be individual members is by the by. So we had this strange position where we invited individual members to the meeting. Their votes were counted in the votes, but their presence was not counted in the quorum for whether the meeting itself was valid.
There's also a question from Luke Blakey, who says, I became aware that an issue happened last time after chatting to Elaine Dean, the former chair, a while later. I understand some of the societies took notice and Julie did find some volunteers for the second time. Richard, can you comment on that?
So last time we held a standalone AGM in early June. It was one person short of a quorum, so we continued it on an indicative basis, adjourned it, and reconvened very briefly at Congress last year. And because it was at Congress, we were able to rally round and make sure that we did have enough people for it to be valid. I think it's, as I say, it's simply an anomaly, an unintended consequence of the rule amendments more than 15 years ago.
So we have two follow-up questions from Kath and Luke. Luke says, this kick up the bottom seems to have been beneficial. Should we leave it as it is? But then Kath says, so does the new rule mean we no longer need engagement from institutional members? Did last year's lack of chorusy reflect a trend in institutional disengagement, Richard?
No. So the new rule includes both classes of member. So it means that we have to be engaging everybody. I think it was just bad luck, to be honest. I don't think we haven't seen a long-term trend of disengagement. It was just bad luck that on the day, on a technicality, we missed it. That's the long and short of it. I mean, last year was the first time that we tried to hold a standalone meeting for some considerable time. We'd always previously piggybacked on other co-op movement events where lots of our corporate members were going to be present anyway.
George Conkey adds, really response to the quorum, should not the FCA be informed and therefore its response included? I imagine it would go on to say.
So we have to, after this meeting, we have to file the rule amendment with the FCA. They do have the option of not accepting it, but this is in line with the Act. I have had a conversation with the FCA in advance. There's no indication that there's anything that they would object to. We are separately considering a much wider rule amendment, very much similar to what Co-ops UK are doing at their AGM later this afternoon. But that is a piece of work that requires sensitive engagement with some of our larger corporate members, and
We
seem to have lost Richard. I can't see any more questions.
There's a question from John Courtnage in the panel saying, what is the size of the franchise and are there separate franchises / colleges? Richard?
So the way it works is, at the moment, we have 90 paid up individual members. The individual members get a vote for the individual representative on the board. That's on a one member, one vote basis. For board elections, there's another section of members, which are the kind of medium and larger organisations. They have weighted votes according partly to historic shareholding and more significantly to current purchases.
If I carry on with that, we seem to have lost Richard. The other two franchises are Co-operatives UK has the ability to appoint one board member, and the Co-op group also has the ability within the rules to appoint up to 4 board members.
The National Members Council, and there is a vacancy which the group board can fill with an employee or with whomsoever they wish, but that's currently vacant. And there is also a vacant seat for the board of Co-operatives UK to appoint a representative, and they will be discussing whether they want to fill that seat at the first board meeting after their AGM. In terms of members' meetings, unless 20 members give me 8 days notice of wishing to have a card vote, or Barbara as chair requests a card vote, votes at meetings are on a one member, one vote basis for everybody. And that's what the rules say. It's also been the custom and practice for many years.
Thank you. I think between you managed to answer that. Can you see any more questions?
George Conkey has said that my point is in relation to the party.
Oh, and the size. It's the size of. So John, I told you how many individual members there were. For the corporate members, there are about 30 corporate members. Half of them co-ops, half of them other organisations, mostly trade unions.
Thank you, Richard. Any more questions? I can't see any. Right, thank you, Richard and Rebecca. I will be proposing this. Can I ask for a seconder, please?
I'm not sure if we've lost Richard again, but Jim Watts from Central England has seconded that.
Thank you. The resolution will now be on the screen for you to cast your votes. You have 45 seconds to place your vote on approving the rule change, and you can vote now.
So I declare that result, that vote carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. That brings us to the end of the special general meeting. Before we close the meeting, I would like to extend our thanks once again to Co-operatives UK, especially Paul Murphy, who has made sure the tech side of things have run smoothly today. Thanks to Rebecca and Richard, who have been on the panel with me and have worked tremendously hard this week to put this together, particularly Rebecca. And also thanks to Miles and Anka and Kia for their supporting Rebecca this week. Also thanks to Bev Perkins for helping to manage the questions, and to all of you who have taken part in this AGM and SGM. There will be a full report of both meetings in Co-op News very soon, but meanwhile, take care, stay safe, and hopefully we'll see you all again in person in the not too distant future.